The town bridge in Guildford was the starting point of the Wey navigation some 350 years ago. Built by the Weston family, it winds its way over 15 miles to the River Thames. Our journey takes us northwards towards the first lock at Stoke. Guildford was the centre of power and wealth in the county. A very strong incentive for a commercial route to London, this country's largest market. Before we leave Guildford, let's take a look at the town wharf with its 17th century man-operated treadmill crane, the only working example of its type in this county. After Mr. George Weston opened the Wey navigation in 1653, the traffic on the Wey grew rapidly, with barges becoming larger and carrying capacities maximised. Eventually, the barge-building craftsmen at Dapdoon Wharf were building vessels specially designed for use on the Wey navigation. Sir Richard Weston's labourers, numbering some 200 men, constructed the first lock here, almost 1 mile downstream of Stoke's Mill. Stoke Lock is the very place where several waterway management ideas were developed, and their benefits proved. Principles derived here eventually brought about the construction of canals throughout Britain. Situated on a tight right-hand bend that lowers the cut of the navigation back into the course of the River Wey proper, here we cross the river by a bridge and walk the towpath on the Sutton Place estate. Bowers Lock lowers the vessel 7 feet. That's a further 10% closer to the level of the Thames. Bowers Mill was built on ground some 12 to 15 feet above the level of the river at this location. It represented a very secure investment for the Sutton Place estate. The whole complex of lock and buildings nestles in amongst mature trees, many clearly hundreds of years old, and a few that probably predate the canal by 500 years. One oak standing by the towpath, bound with iron bands, appears to be the best part of 1,000 years old. Triggs Lock is situated in a low-lying area, often water meadow. It needed parallel banks to bring the navigation to this place. There is a further lowering of 6 feet 6 inches, bringing us ever closer to the level of the Thames. The lock's original timber and turf sides were replaced by concrete in a number of rebuilding stages. The existing lockkeeper's cottage was built in 1769, with an extension in 1916, and renovated by the National Trust in 1987. Its isolation proving popular to artists and photographers alike. Heavy horses were used in the early days of the navigations to haul barges, usually a single horse pulling a fully laden barge which could weigh 80 to 90 tons and at good walking speed from its position on the towpath by the river. Worsfold gates are part of the Wey's flood defences. The gates are fitted with wooden sluices with a fulcrum of the traditional style. A lever is used to open or close the sluices and held in position by pushing pins through the retaining frame. Upstream of the gates, on the lower part of an early brick-built bridge footing, bargees with horse-drawn barges have left their signature in the form of grooves cut into the brickwork by the steel hawser towing rope. Papercourt Lock lowers us another 8 feet. It was opened in 1653. Here too the lock is located in low-lying land with water meadow nearby. It required 2 banks to take the flow on towards Weybridge. The National Trust moved the original lock to improve water management here. At this place we are halfway on our journey from Guildford to the Thames. Purford Lock has a drop of 4 feet 9 inches. Originally the lock did not have a bypass channel, which meant that when Cox's Lock was built downstream, the paddles in the lock gates had to be kept partially open to prevent the mill from being starved of its water supply and the vessels grounding. The National Trust maintains the navigation using traditional techniques and materials wherever possible in order to preserve the spirit and visual amenity of the waterways. The income from licenses of the navigation's users provides a significant contribution to the running of the navigation. The river banks and towpaths require constant maintenance. The Trust maintains aquatic plant growth along the edge of the channel to help protect the banks from damage by the wash of passing boats and also to provide a habitat for wildlife. A half-mile stretch of the land close towards Pyrford Lock and lying between the canal and the original course of the River Wey to the east of here has been bought by the National Trust to prevent any further encroachment by modern development. Cox's Lock, with its drop of 8 feet 6 inches, was in splendid isolation for well over a century. Barge crews at the time were able to buy loaves baked at the mill in order to test the quality of the flour for just a penny a loaf. As we stand and look at these buildings, it is incredible to think that when we reach the River Thames, the water level at Guildford Town Bridge will be above us to the same extent as the highest windows of the mill are above the ground. In the 20th century, all of the Wey navigation locks were renovated and rebuilt at one time or another with concrete or brick, thus providing the lock chambers with vertical walls throughout their full length. The sign says, opened in 1653, end of the longest man-made section of navigation. We've passed through 10 locks and gates and passed through some of the most tranquil scenes of the Surrey countryside.